Hey team, you're about to experience my interview with Robin ALLENSON. Robin is the co-founder and CEO of Similar.ai. Similar.ai is a organic SEO platform. It's a SaaS platform that gives SEO teams superpowers, as they like to put it. It's an intelligent SEO platform that automatically discovers customer intent, cleans and restructures pages, and creates new pages and content to match search demand at scale. But a fantastic conversation about what enterprise SEO is, how the Similar.ai platform works, and how he has found a gap in the market, or what he believes to be a big gap in the market, to bridge the gap between fully manual SEO activities and AI automated SEO activities. We had a really, really great conversation, and I learned a ton. Enjoy. This is the E-commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Robin ALLENSON to the pod from Similar.ai. Welcome, Robin.
Thanks, Jason. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us for the ride today. It is fantastic to have you with us, especially talking about a subject that I know very little about. I am not an expert on, I don't profess to be an expert on, and that I don't offer services around, which is enterprise grade SEO.
Yeah, now we've been doing this for a few years, and I'm very happy to be able to talk a little bit more about the space and what we're up to and the kind of problems and challenges that a lot of our customers face.
Now, I know a lot of my guests and listeners will know a lot about SEO. They might understand the purpose of SEO. They might understand the importance of SEO. They might even be trying to do it in their businesses, or they may even have an agency that they're working with for SEO. In a nutshell, why don't you tell us, before we get into Similar and what your tech does, why don't you tell us from your lens and through your perspective what SEO actually is?
Sure. So I think for a lot of e-commerce stores, they're very used to describing their products in the ways that their sellers or that their brands would describe their products. And I think SEO is really about building a more buyer-centric way of accessing those products. So a lot of what we're trying to do is trying to think about how do you market a whole bunch of products in the product catalog to search engine users, or as we call them nowadays, people. And so we're really trying to build a user-centric or a buyer-centric way of looking at a store. And when you do that, you naturally start to market different segments of products out to different groups of users. And search engine data is actually very useful for understanding which users want what. So SEO comes down to building a more intuitive way for users to shop and then online store. And so that sounds like a very simple way of putting it. Under the hood, that's very complex. How do you actually match up all this complex product data to how users are searching? And that actually comes down to doing different things with the pages on the site, with the links between those pages, what kind of content or what kind of products or what kind of other things those pages contain. But at its heart, it means that every single page on the site should be an amazing user experience for a certain kind of user. So that's how I see it. And when you do that, then it makes it much easier for search engine users to access the content and the unique product offering you have, and that delivers more organic revenue.
And in the e-commerce space, obviously the entire goal is to try to get as many people searching for the types of products that you sell onto your website. That's the goal, right? So that we have certain customers or potential customers who have declared intent to buy, or at least intent to shop or intent to browse, by putting a query into a search engine like Google and saying red polka dot dress or whatever it might be that they're looking for to purchase or to browse for. And I think the challenge comes down, as I see it, as I understand it, there's this disconnect between the way that a brand might describe or name their products or organize their products on their website in a way that a given searcher might search for that same product. And if those searches are not in congruency or in alignment with the way that a brand describes their own products, or and puts the attributes against their products, or organizes their sitemap, or organizes their super menu structure, the challenge is trying to match up and find synergy between what searchers are searching for and not only what you're selling, but how you are selling it from a descriptive verbiage language perspective, right? And we're trying to close that gap.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Jason. I couldn't put it better myself. Kind of thing. Sometimes, I guess I have a whole bunch of different analogies or ways of thinking about this. I could talk about, I don't know, for a completely different kind of shop, I could talk about perfectly flaky, soft and succulent cod in a crisp and floury beer and dough batter with wild russet potatoes cooked in lard. And somebody could type in fish and chips, which would be a very British kind of search term, and it wouldn't match up to any of one of those words, right? But actually, fish and chips is what that product is about. It's just that the way that the person making that is trying to differentiate themselves is by, in what they see of a very crowded space, they're trying to pinpoint exactly what they do that nobody else does. But sometimes when people are searching, they're actually searching for much simpler things. They might be using a generic term. Austin will be using language that is intuitive for them, and intuitive, actually, if you realize that millions of people make these kind of searches, intuitive for people. So it's not just about that one individual person, but lots of people talk about things in that way. And they find it hard sometimes to get through the verbiage that might be on a product page and actually really understand, wait, is this really what I'm looking for? So they need a translation agency to turn all of these complex descriptions into something more buyer-centric, more human, more accessible. So another maybe unrelated anecdote, but I'm thinking of a brand that we worked with. It's quite a few years ago now, and we'd looked through their site structure, their taxonomy, and we worked out they had a section. It was a fashion brand. They had a section for playsuits and jumpsuits, and we said, look, we don't think there's actually in your local market. There's not a lot of people looking for playsuits, and most of the searches come down to different variants of jumpsuits. Obviously, you can still sell those things, but a lot of the people will be searching for them as jumpsuits. And so the playsuits, like, do you really want to have that there? Maybe you just get rid of that and just focus, you rename the playsuits and jumpsuits just the jumpsuits. And so we were talking about how people access their site and how the top half is maybe not a great way of structuring all the products on the site. And maybe there's a more intuitive way of doing that. And they said, wait, you mean Fire, Bob, and Giles? Because for them, the playsuits and jumpsuits was not a section on the site. That was a department in their organization. And to them, this kind of category, that wasn't a way of structuring their online presence. That was the language of the business. And so that department had been around for a long time. And so to them, it was almost unthinkable to think about structuring their products in a different way. Whilst for the buyers of their products, that was just a much more natural, intuitive way of doing things. And so that the kind of language that people use to buy things, the intuitive way they express, that's changing all the time. There are new advertising campaigns, there are new products that come out, there are new kinds of products, even so people think of their clothing as being fixed, but there are, I know, things like coatigans, which I'd never heard of, which is half coat, half cardigan. There are lots of new words that come out, and then fitting those into an existing site structure, even when those things are actually, when there are new trends and new styles coming out every season or every month, that's a crazy hard optimization problem. So it's for a reason that people talk about search engine optimization, because you're trying to work out, hey, how do we market all these different diverse products? The other thing is, it might be some people are going to look for, so in fashion, some people are going to look for the main product category. Other people are just going to look for the brand and then not worry too much about the actual category, which sounds crazy in a way. But a lot of people are looking for, I don't know, Air Maxes. They don't even expressly mention Nike, right? They don't even say, hey, I want some trainers, because they don't need to, because all those things are just implicit. They're baked into that search query. But the problem with these implicit things is that it can be quite hard for typical on-site search engines to match up that kind of stuff. So they type in this string, and the on-site search engine goes off and looks for products that match that string. But they don't really understand the language that these people are using. So I think a lot of SEO is actually really about translating this very seller-centric, very kind of manufacturing-centric almost way of thinking about the products that you're selling into something that's much more intuitive for the people who are searching for them, and trying to match that up to the actual needs that are out there in the local market. Does that make sense?
Makes complete sense. And I think I'm also going to use maybe some examples from the industry that I think will help my audience, and hopefully I'll get your thoughts on this, help my audience to better understand what I guess enterprise SEO at scale might look like using technology like Similar or other technologies that are similar to Similar. And I think when I first started out in the industry working agency side, the very first time I ever, well, actually it was the second time I'd worked in an agency, but this when I went back into agency life after selling my pure play e-commerce business, and even when I was running my pure play e-commerce business, the model of SEO for e-commerce brands was really two things. One is, and we were, as an agency, we were offering marketing services, we were offering SEO services. I was an account manager, so I wasn't doing the doing, but I was helping brands be strategic about how they built their e-commerce website, how they marketed their e-commerce website, how they ultimately made more sales. And then we had SEO specialists in the room that were doing actually the doing of the work. But one of the things we did, and I think this is probably getting to the heart of what you automate and how you bring scale to these brands. This is going back, probably 20 years ago now. And the reality is what we did is we would take two primary data sources before we ever started to think about how we could improve the SEO rankings of a given site. We would look at both the internal site search queries. So what are people actually searching for on the website? What terminology are they using? What language are they using? And we would do site search optimization on the website so that people were being redirected to the right categories or products based on their query, even if we didn't have an exact match between that query and a product or and a category of products. So we would start to understand the semantics of what people were using when they were using our site by looking at the queries they made once they were actually on the site. And in some cases, that would also lead to new product development. If we didn't have any exactly matched products, then we would give that information back to the seller and they could go and either procure those products or make those products that the clients were searching for that they didn't have a match for. Then we would also look at search query volume, right? We would use Moz or we'd use any number of keyword research tools out there. And we would be looking at the queries that people were using in the current moment or the prior 6 months, whatever it was, to make sure that we were understanding what the market perceived our products to be or what the demand around our products was based on the search queries that were used out there in search engine land. Then what we would do is we would take these two data sets, we would synthesize and distill those down, and we'd say, okay, we have people using this terminology on our website. We have this people using this terminology out in search engine land. Now what we need to do is we need to say, okay, what are the gaps? What are the gaps between, say, for example, category pages that we have today and those queries both internally and externally? And if we don't have pages that match those queries, then we're going to manually create, and the reason why we didn't create a product page, say, for example, or there's only so many places you can market to long tail keyword queries on an e-commerce website. So the one there's two primary ways in my experience that people do it. They either create categories with those queries as the category name, or they create a search query on site with those words as the variables that then form a landing page with those variables reapplied as a query string, so that then if you were doing paid marketing, for example, you had a landing page to land people on for those exact queries. Now, so what we would do as a service is we would then go and we would close that gap. We would look at their existing category structure and we would say, okay, someone's looking for red mid-length play suit, and to use your terminology, red mid-length formal play suit or something like, or business play suit or something like that, to use one of the topics you were talking about.
Yep.
And we would say that category does not exist. We might just have play suits, and then there might be a facet and a filter for occasion,
Correct.
color,
Yeah.
length, whatever else. So those attributes may actually exist in the catalog, but they're only surfaced to the user within the website via facets and filters, for example, or it may be brand, or it may be price, or it may be any of these other things. And so what we would do is we would manually, one by one, we would just go down this list of queries that we didn't have a category match for, and we would manually create these categories and manually assign products that matched these categories so that we would have representation in the search engines for those exact queries that there was already demand for out there in the market. Now, as I understand it, effectively what you've done is you've said, that's all fine and good, and it's great that SEO agencies do this work, and it's great that dev agencies can do the appropriate tagging and create the structure so that there's the proper H1s and et cetera, et cetera. But that doesn't scale very well. And you have to throw a heck of a lot of bodies at it, and you have to throw a massive amount of research at it. And so therefore, you might need, in order to close that gap between what we have today and what we need to have, there might be a 10,000 page or 10,000 category in this case gap between what we have and what we need to meet the demands of all those queries out there in the market. And so it sounds like what you've essentially done is said, that's not scalable. That's going to take us 5 years at our current pace to close that gap. And then by that time, there's going to be new queries out there that we're going to have to close the gap against. So we'll never catch up. And so it sounds to me, if I was to boil down what you do, it's to take that very manual process we used to do 20 years ago and automate that process to be able to close that gap much, much more quickly.
That's it. That's it, exactly. I think there are a few things that have changed in maybe in the last decade or two. So one of those is that Google no longer treats keywords as all being distinct. It's grouping those together. It's lumping those together, and there might be tens, there might be hundreds of keywords, different search queries, where Google is effectively showing pretty much the same results. So we group those keywords into what we call topics, and topics are just groups of keywords which search engine users expect to see the same results. Sometimes Google you're going to type in red business, formal, puff-sleeved jumpsuit, and Google is going to go, you know what, I'm going to show you a red business jumpsuit, and I'm going to ignore the puff sleeves and the formal and other things, because probably you're going to see 20 jumpsuits on the page, so you're going to be able to find something you like. Rather than, I might even have pages with that extremely long query that match up to that, but it's going to show you single products. And I know mostly you go to a product page, most people end up bouncing, and category pages actually convert better, which is why they rank better. So I'm just going to give you this page that's going to be better. And so quite often Google is relaxing a lot of these very long tail queries into the same topic, which might have hundreds of different search queries. So rather than creating a page for every keyword, which I know folks used to do a decade ago or 2 decades ago, the downside with that is actually mostly you're ending up really for one of those topics, you only need a single page to rank for any of the keywords. And so if you create a page for every keyword, you're going to get a lot of pages competing for the same keywords. So that kind of cannibalization is called in the SEO industry. You're basically making Google work really hard to work out which of your pages it should show for any particular keyword. Google doesn't like doing that without actual work, and it penalizes you by giving you lower rankings and you getting less organic traffic. But you can have a single page for a topic, and you can be sure that those topics are topics that the current site doesn't rank for, and you don't actually have a page for today, whether it ranks or not. So you can be sure that the pages that you're creating are genuinely incremental and actually going to grow organic revenue when they start to rank. So we get keywords we can look at the keywords that competitors rank for. And then I guess one of the other things we often see, on-site search has actually improved quite a lot. And so sometimes we can use on-site search to take a topic and work out, hey, is there inventory and is it relevant for this topic? So that's one way that kind of new page approach can work, where you're basically matching up demand and supply at scale and saying, hey, we've got 10,000 great answers to, there are lots of people looking. And also this is the kind of a results page, search engine results page that a site like you could rank for. So you don't want, people type in red jumpsuit or playsuit. I can't remember which one we're talking about anymore, but people type in red playsuit but they type in Etsy red playsuit or Amazon red playsuit. Well, guess what? Typically, most of the first page of Google is covered with organic listings from Etsy, organic listings from Amazon. So there's pretty much no point in creating a page about that, even if you might have things that seem to be relevant answers. So there's a lot of kind of additional filters that go on behind the scenes to turn that into something where you can say, hey, we've got a new category page that has lots of relevant products, so loads of searches for it, good demand, and this is a results page that we think the site could rank for. And then we need to make sure that page has internal links and it has the right kind of content on the page. But a lot of that work we can automate. Some sites don't have great on-site search. We can generate keywords from the product listings themselves. So that's an alternative approach. There are other sites which are really focused on selling particular brands in particular categories, and we can work out all the different combinations of those that match up to how people search. That's a very common way in which people search. So there are lots of different ways of automating coming up with keywords. I think what's important is, so we talk about this sometimes as product-led SEO. What that means is that every page that's generated is an amazing user experience. And if it's going to rank for transactional queries, that means it has to have relevant products on that page, which aren't easily accessible through other pages. So there's no point in creating 10 pages with exactly the same products on, even if you give them different names, because that's another kind of duplication. And there's no point in creating pages that you already have, even if they're not ranking, because again, like that's just eventually Google's going to find those things and have to work harder. And then there's no point in creating pages for topics which are already ranking because you're already getting traffic to that. So we really want to find new things. So a lot of the work is working out what are the pages we should create. And then we only want to create a page for the whole topic, not for a single keyword, right? And so it's thinking about where do we create pages or where do we optimize existing pages. That's a lot of that work, but it's exactly what the agency was doing all that time ago. The other big difference is, and we see this consistently, we talk to a lot of different enterprise teams, to a lot of brands. We say, what do you think enterprise SEO comes down to? And what do you struggle with? And so the way that we look at the market is that really enterprise SEO comes down to making more changes to the site that make the site user-centric, and then working out which of those changes actually move the needle and then doing more of those. And so it's pretty simple. The problem is for a lot of, if you look at the typical approaches, some folks will hire an agency to do that job. Some folks will have an internal development team to do that job. Some folks will have a kind of a tool that does, I don't know, the group's keywords together, or a tool that does all the possible SEO work for you. But all of those, if you look through each of those kind of common approaches, very few of them actually help you get more stuff live on the site that makes the site user-centric. So it could be publishing a new page, or it could be updating internal linking, it could be updating content. If you're working with an agency, agencies are great at pointing out the problems that the site has and giving you a lot of insights, a lot of very good recommendations. But then it's typically up to the internal team to actually turn that into fixes that you're going to roll out on the site, right? And so there's a kind of gulf between knowing what problems you have and knowing how to fix them and actually getting those fixed. Similarly, sometimes we often talk to enterprise SEO teams, they're working with their internal development team, and they have 30 things they want to get live this year. And the internal dev team the engineering team has 300 things from 10 other teams that they're supposed to get live, and it doesn't all add up. So what happens is that can become a bottleneck. And so they get 2 or 3 changes live each year, rather than the 20 or 30 that they want to get live. And the same with each of those tools give you, like you were talking about Moz and others, they're great. They're kind of saying, hey, here's some keywords that you could rank for. And then you're like, yeah, but what change do I have to make on the site? I need something that's actually ready to publish, not something that's giving me insight. So a lot of what we think differentiates what we do is that everything we produce is a ready to publish change. So what comes out is not, hey, I know, thinking of a kind of, not to pick on Moz, but I think it's very typical for a lot of SEO tools is that they report on problems. They go, we found 27 of your H1s and they're too long. You should shorten these. And you're like, yeah, but what do I change them to? Or we found your nearest competitor has 20,000 more pages than you. Yeah, which pages should I publish and why? So we're trying to answer those second questions, right? So we're actually trying to say, actually, we want to change the content on the page to make it more user-centric. We found 400 pages we're going to do that to. Here's all the content for all those 400 pages, what it was and what it will be. And we have then an integration to actually update that content. You can click publish, it will go live. We can start tracking the changes. Or here's the 10,000 pages that we're going to create. This is why these are categories that you don't rank for, don't have a page for today. They're things that competitors are getting traffic for that they're turning into revenue. And we think you can actually grow revenue with this. Are you ready to publish? You can check through them. You can also give us feedback and we can iterate on those things. But when you're ready to publish, click publish, they actually go live. We start tracking the impact. And so we think actually, like our goal is to 10x the changes that Google is actually going to see, like actually publish a lot of pages and start making sure those pages are in the sitemap, making sure those pages have internal links, making sure those pages have all the prerequisites for actually search engine users finding them and using them to buy products. That's really what SEO comes down to. It's not an insight or a recommendation. It's getting more things live that are going to make the site more user-centric, make it easier for buyers to buy things through you. So that's, yeah, long-winded answer there. But so that's what we think. It's not just about automation of the problem you were trying to solve, because the problem you were trying to solve is only part of the overall problem. And the risk with automation, and I'm sure, I don't need to mention, but I'm sure plenty of people can think of some different vendors where, so I think the old adage is to err is human, and to really muck things up requires a computer. And so what we used to think about for computer generated pages, the old word for that was spam, right? So what we're trying to do is not generate as many pages as possible, or not try and generate a page for every keyword that we can find, but actually trying to work out what are the right pages to create that are going to be amazing user experiences that will be incremental and drive additional organic revenue to the site. That's a hard problem, but it's the only problem we're solving. So that's what we're focused on.
And I can already hear my audience sighing in the background saying, isn't that going to end up with a cluttered mega menu? Isn't that going to end up with a cluttered category structure? Isn't that just going to basically bog the site down with a whole bunch of information that my customers that are already come to the site, and then maybe they're searching and they're browsing through the mega menu, isn't that going to actually make it harder for our customers once they're on the site to find the things that they're looking for? And I guess what I really want to point out here is that we're not saying that every one of those new category pages that we create, because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about creating category pages at scale for buckets of keyword themes and topics, and automatically assigning the correct products to those categories that match those long tail queries to make sure that when someone lands on that category page, it's actually relevant and is showing products related to that specific topic or query or bucket of keywords. Now, the beautiful thing is that now with modern e-commerce platforms, it didn't always used to be this way, but the beauty of modern e-commerce platforms is I can go out and create 10,000 category pages, and not a single one of those has to be in my navigation structure. I can choose to put them on my navigation structure if I so desire, but they don't have to be there. They can still be in my sitemap. They can still have internal linking. They can still have products assigned to them, and they can still be active pages, but they don't necessarily have to be in my mega menu cluttering up my nice, beautiful, streamlined, corporate speak friendly navigation structure. And I think that's worth pointing out, because I think that when people start thinking about SEO at scale, the first thing that comes to mind is clutter and actually ruining the site experience for people that haven't landed on the website via a long tail SEO query and landed on the exact page they want, but people that have just come by a branded query or something like that, or a direct URL link, and they're now starting to search through the mega menu, because data shows that about 50% of people that land on your website will try to find products via the search, the internal site search engine. And about 50% of your customers will try to find products through the category structure that you have in your menu. And so the reality is you still need to create a fantastic on-site experience for those people that are going to use your on-site search engine. And for people that are going to use your mega menu, you need to have a great experience for that. And so I think we just want to put everyone's minds at ease. We're not expecting these 10,000 new SEO friendly pages that you've created for these longer tail queries or buckets of queries. We're not expecting that all to live in the menu structure, are we? Hey team, I have a big favor to ask you. Please pause this episode and send the link of this episode to someone you know that you think would enjoy this content. Really appreciate you spreading the word. This is how we grow. We're not a Joe Rogan. We don't have big, massive advertising budgets, but we absolutely want to grow. We want to get the learnings from all of these episodes out to as wide of an audience as possible, and we need your help to do it. Thank you. And now back to your listening.
No, not at all. It's a great point, Jason. So actually, a few related kind of answers. So one is that mega nav, the mega menu, that can only hold so much. So it's only got so many categories that you can put in there. And if you want to start to make it easier for users to find their front door to your store that has exactly the products that they're looking for, so they can explore from the right point, and you can also, you have a great starting point to start eliciting their actual intent, because it's probably not exactly what they walked in the door with, but they're like, oh, actually, you have that as well. I'd like to explore that. That's what you want to enable customers to make those journeys without having to wade through every possible store of the product, or every possible product in the store, or every possible category. You want them to be able to start from a great starting point. You won't be able to fit all that in your main menu. in your top nav. It's not going to fit in there. So you can put those categories at other places in the site, and you can make sure that other category pages are linking to them. And so you can add topically relevant links in other category pages so they're getting the in links. So search engine users, but also so search engines can crawl your pages and find those new category pages. That's super important. And yeah, of course, they have to be in the sitemap. But I think where the pages actually live is worth talking about. I think there's three approaches for how to open up so sometimes they're called your browse category pages. So the pages are actually part of the core site structure, which is normally very hard to change. So you can, in some stores, you basically see they don't open up any of their facets at all. So none of the facets, and actually even some of the categories are not necessarily indexable. So maybe you've just got your top nav, those categories are indexable. So search engines go there, search engine users can go there as their first point. And after that, they have to use the on-site search or use the facets themselves are all closed down. And so if you're looking for, you've got your jumpsuit or your play suit, and you've got a red jumpsuit and a red formal jumpsuit, but you can't get to the red formal jumpsuit in one go. You have to jump to the jumpsuit and then play with those filters to get the right kind of jumpsuit or play suit. Too many play suit puns coming up. But then what the alternative approach is actually open up all the filters. So all the possible combinations. The downside to that, which I think everybody knows, is that you end up with this kind of infinite number of pages, and search engines can't crawl all of those. And most of those are completely uninteresting to humans. Aren't any people looking for those things. They don't actually have any searches. So that also doesn't work. And then you see some kind of middle paths, which is something like we'll open up all the possible categories and all the subcategories. Some of these sites have incredibly 5 levels of subcategories to things that nobody's actually looking for. And then we'll allow any filter, but it's only going to be one. So you can only have one kind of filter attribute. You can't combine them. Whilst sometimes there are searches with huge demand that combine 2 or 3 of those things. And sometimes just one of their subcategories has no demand at all. There's nobody looking for those things. When I say there's no demand, I just mean nobody's searching for that, right? And yeah, there are products for that. And maybe they'll eventually get there if they're really deep on the site. But there's no point in surfacing that up to search engines. And so apart from this main taxonomy, so you've got your categories, subcategories, you've got your facets, there are also topics, bunches of search queries that can't be expressed through your main taxonomy, that are just completely different from how you're expressing them. And so you could add those as query pages. And so those wouldn't be accessible through the top nav or through the filters, but they do express ways that people are searching. And so it makes a lot of sense to actually have pages for those. What we can do is we can scalably create some of these query pages. We can also identify which combinations of categories and facets have relevant products and have demand. So which ones of those are actually, so maybe the 3 different facets all tied together, and it makes a lot of sense. What we often see is that sites, if you look at the side nav where the facets are, the things they're showing on top are the facets for which they have the most products, which it makes a lot of sense from their point of view. For the user's point of view, the things that you should probably show on the top are the things that have the most searches, the most demand. And so what we often see is that some of those facets actually get opened up, but therefore the top 3 things have got 3,000 products in each of the facets. Whilst some of the things have only got 16 products, say, which would still make an amazing category page, by the way, but only got 16 products, but it's got a ton of demand, right? And it's just hidden down there at the bottom. So there's all these things that the people are really interested in searching for, which the site has unique content that deserves to be shown to any search engine user with that intent. They deserve to rank number 1. Right? But it's hidden there. And it's very hard to look with this kind of user-centric lens over those categories and work out which ones actually deserve to be surfaced. So what we're trying to do is 3-fold problem. So one is trying to work out which of those categories and facet combinations actually should be available at the front door. Work out which things that competitors are getting traffic for or are in the product catalog that really deserve to have, that do have demand, but can't easily be expressed through the main catalog. And so we need to create new pages, query pages, search pages. And then how do we make sure that all of those things are actually, there's a biocentric taxonomy to the site that isn't the top now. We don't want to interfere with that. But so there is internal linking. And where do those internal links come from? How do we join that all together in a coherent way? So that's those kind of three things are what we're thinking about when we're talking about this kind of biocentric site structure. But it's not, if you just shove those things into your top hat, then you're going to get in a lot of trouble. Also because the play suits and jumpsuit section is going to get upset because that's what they own. They have, that's it, right? So we're not trying to change the structure of the organization. We're trying to update the structure of the site so that it's more
We're trying to
easy
augment
to use
it
for
in a way.
clients. Indeed. That's it. That's it exactly.
And I think you raised two fantastic points there, which is that many brands, they spend a huge amount of time, money, effort in providing and adding structured product attributes to the products so that people can find those products and so that they can go from, if they've got a category in their mega menu that has 500 products in it, they want the customer who lands on that category to be able to rapidly filter that down to 5 to 10 products that are relevant to them with the application of 1, 2, or 3 filters just really quickly. And that requires fantastic structured product data, not description data that's unstructured, but fantastic structured product data. And brands, and they even use technologies like Ocular and other technologies to auto tag their products with the correct structured data so that faceting and filtering experience within categories is a really good one for their customers. But what they overlook sometimes is the fact that those facets and filters could sometimes be categories in their own right or subcategories in their own right. But they also overlook the fact that sometimes the category mixed with 1, 2, or 3 filters being applied is also a query in its own right for some customers. So when they go to a search engine, they're effectively putting in a query into Google that is effectively a combination of one of those categories or subcategories combined with 1 or 2 of those filters, but they're just putting it in a single question to Google. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, look, it's fantastic that you've got these facets. It's fantastic that you've got the structured data against your products. But if we're not turning those into query specific category / landing pages, then we're not leveraging all that effort you're doing around structured product data. We're not leveraging that to the maximum benefit of your customers or potential customers. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to say, great, you've done all this work. Now let's leverage it in new ways. And let's create category landing pages that combine all of that data together into a single title for that category.
Yeah. So a way of thinking about that is you've already done all this work in order to help customers who were pretty sure they were going to buy from you when they started their customer journey. Why don't we leverage all the work you've done to sell to customers who didn't know that they were going to buy from this store when they started their search? But they started their search with a very specific intent in mind. It's an intent which you're uniquely qualified to answer, right? All we have to do is connect those two things, right? So that's actually quite simple. It's not like we're trying to, I don't know, advertise in a way. It's what we're really doing here is we're just connecting up to your products and your product attribution to folks who are looking for exactly that combination of things, but just weren't aware that you have those. And so that marketing, I think that's very powerful because you're really connecting up big groups of people who have unmet needs and you're helping them meet those needs, right? I think that's very powerful.
And one of the final things that we really struggled with as an agency all those years ago that I'd love your thoughts on, because I think, at least as far as I can tell, you automate this piece as well, which is a massive, heavy lift for most brands, is that we would have to go back in as the catalog changed of the brands that we were supporting from an SEO perspective. We would have to routinely, once a week, once a month, whatever it might be, it's almost like site search optimization, but we were doing it for category, product to category assignment optimization. So we'd have to go into the site once a month. We'd have to look at all the SEO friendly category pages that we had created that were not in the mega menu. We would have to then go in and say, okay, has their catalog changed? Has the products that they have available changed? Have they added new products? Have they deleted products? Have they run out of inventory on certain products? We would have to then go in and manually update the product category assignments to make sure that the products that were on those pages that we had created that continued to stay relevant to those pages, that we made sure that all of the products that should have been represented on those pages were, and that products that were maybe deleted or out of stock or whatever, we would remove those from being assigned to the page. And this is a manual process. And so if you've created 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 SEO pages manually, which is how brands or their agencies usually do it, then there's the constant task of updating the products that live on those category pages. And once again, just as creating 10,000 SEO friendly pages is not scalable in its own right, neither is keeping those pages updated either, whether it be updating the buckets of queries that are associated with that page, therefore having to update and tweak the content slightly, but also making sure that the product experience on that page is super relevant, super targeted, and it's going to create a great experience for those real humans that you just described. And so maybe you can speak a little bit to that as well, and the fact that your average SEO agency is so overwhelmed with this manual grunt work that it's difficult for them to do the strategic work that they'd actually like to do on behalf of their clients.
Indeed. Indeed. So it's a great question. So I think we have different integrations because we're not just, like you say, trying to even just come up with a list of new pages to create. We're creating those pages on the CMS. And so that some of our customers, they have an existing CMS, they're using Adobe, they're using Salesforce Commerce Cloud, they're using Shopify. But some of our customers, they have, so I was joking, for a lot of our early customers, we were selling into some much larger retail stores, and they built their own platform 10 years ago, documented it extensively, and then the developers who documented it burnt the documentation and they all left. And so there's a huge amount of legacy code, and so nobody really understands how the tool works exactly. And so we're building an integration over that that actually simplifies getting SEO changes live for the customer. And that kind of legacy integration uses our standard APIs to do that work. And then for other off-the-shelf CMSs, like the ones I mentioned, we also do integrations with those things too. And so what's great about the pages that we can create is actually that we can think really carefully about what content is going to be shown on those pages. And that content is either the text content, but also the products shown on those pages, and also the product data that's shown on the pages, so the images and the text that's shown there. And so we have the potential to do a lot more to actually highlight how those products are actually relevant to the intent of the user that comes from Google. Right. And so that means that the product text can actually talk a lot more about the kind of things that those users would expect. And when the integration that we do, we both have integrations that actually where we're doing the matching from the category to the products. And so we're using a feed, or we're using exports from the PIM and from other systems. And we're doing that matching is automated. And so the advantage of that is that we can rerun that every day or every week, and the products will stay up to date. And the other advantage, and so we also do integrations with on-site search. So some of the on-site search solutions that have come out in recent years are superb, right? And they actually really do well at solving this problem. And also for some of our customers, they have enormous product catalogs. And so it's pretty unwieldy to pull in, tens of millions of products in a feed. And so on-site search can be a great solution to that as well. But both of those things, by automating them, you free people up to actually do a lot more of the strategic work on working out what the tactics are. Because you can say, okay, I want to create 10,000 pages, but here's what I need to these pages. And you can actually set out we've got a recipe, set out a series of instructions of what you want those pages to do and why. And then press a button and away they go. And then we can also say, hey, we want those pages to be kept up to date. We also want the internal linking to be kept up to date. So we're going to recrawl the site. If some of those pages, they've run out of inventory, so we're not going to make them indexable anymore. We're no longer going to link to those pages. And that all just happens without us or without the team needing to lift a finger, right? And so that's very powerful. But I think it's not just about the speed. It gives you something superior to what you were able to do before. Because you can now actually be sure, hey, we match up. We're able to cover all of these searches, and there aren't any kind of gaps. We can market all of our products. Previously, I think it was quite common for a lot of those products to not really appear on category pages or not really have coverage. Now you can guarantee that won't happen. And so that gives you a strategic advantage. So I guess what I was trying to say here was that by automating these low-level processes, you actually get a different quality of experience for your users, right? You're able to do a whole range of different things.
I think for a layperson who doesn't necessarily work in the SEO space, we're effectively trying to create pages that are pre-filtered, right? And they're pre-filtered for the customer, so that instead of having to go down to 3 layers deep in the category structure and then apply 5 facets or filters to find the 3 relevant products that we're looking for that exactly matches our interest that we want to spend money on and buy today, we're trying to say we're going to create you a landing page that does all that work for you. We've already pre-applied those attributes. We've pre-applied those filters. We've actually drilled down into the category structure and the taxonomy and the data that we have available. And now we're showing you a hyper accurate category page with just the products that you actually want to buy and that you're looking for. And really, I think that's what we're trying to say here. If I boiled it all down into one succinct sentence, it's the fact that we're trying to do all of the work that a customer would normally have to do once they arrive at your site to find the products that they're looking for. We're trying to do that in advance so that when they land there, they're ready to buy, because the products that are most relevant to them, that's the page they've landed on. And we've done all the heavy lifting for them in advance.
Jason, if you think about it, it's crazy because we're talking about this as an SEO product when clearly this has massive conversion benefits too, right? Clearly the lack of removing the friction to showing the products that actually match up to what the user needs and wants. Yeah, that has an amazing benefit too. So it's not surprising that these longer tail pages, they convert an awful lot better. But very few people are thinking them as a conversion strategy, when actually trying to make the front door to your site not be the homepage where you talk about your brand, but actually be front and center, be what the products that the customer needs. That's actually a kind of quite a different reimagining of the site. And so we think it's a bit like, really, when you're having a conversation, you're the salesperson and you're having a conversation with the customer as soon as they come in, rather than you saying, hey, I want to tell you about our brand. You're actually saying, hey, I noticed some things about you. Can we have a conversation about that? So it's a very customer centric way of thinking about things. Customer says, I was looking at this, and you're like, here's the 3 things I was thinking of. What do you think? But we've also got some internal links that jump off to other very relevant things. Customers having an amazing time. And so that experience is, we think this is I guess I want to bring this up because some folks are thinking SEO, oh, that's a way of, I don't know, destroying my customer experience.
Gaming the search engines.
Yeah, we're gonna trick this a black box to trick people into giving us more traffic. But actually, I really, like I said from the start, what we're really doing here is we're getting more changes live that make the site more user-centric, more built around the needs of the buyer, and then delivering them as quickly as we can, things that are extremely relevant just to them, right? And if we can do, but there isn't one buyer, there's the tens of thousands of different buyers, and we have a front page for every single one of them, right? But that collectively, yeah, that's an amazing experience, right? And so it isn't just about traffic, or it's really about finding out what kinds of buyers you have, finding out what kind of unique product answers you have, and matching those two together in a way that wasn't humanly possible before.
And when I go in and I'm consulting, and oftentimes my clients will get me to consult on information architecture with them. And so what I like to do is I like to think of the navigation structure, the category structure, as guided navigation. I like to think of, and I oftentimes use this anecdote. If you go into a jewelry store, the person behind the counter at the jewelry store isn't just going to start grabbing things out from the counter and plunking it on top and say, hey, would you like to see this today? The first thing they're going to do when you walk through the door is they're going to ask qualifying questions. Hey, great to see you today. Are you shopping today for yourself or for someone else? Okay, cool. Is this person you're shopping for, is it a male or a female? Are you buying for a special occasion? Are you proposing? Is this for Valentine's Day? They're going to ask you a whole plethora. A good salesperson anyway is going to ask you a whole bunch of qualifying questions about why you're in the store that day and what you're looking for, what you're interested in. And then they're going to go to their cabinet, and then they're going to pull some things out. They're going to say, based on what you're looking for today and what you're interested in and what your budget is, et cetera, white gold, yellow gold, et cetera, which particular stone type, all those questions. They're then going to go to their cabinet and they're going to pull out maybe 5 items or 3 items that they think matches what you're actually there to buy or that you're interested in. And effectively what we're trying to do is we're trying to mimic that, right? We're trying to say, look, we're effectively asking that same series of questions, but via Google and via that Google query that we're parsing. And we're saying, okay, your intent, just like you're talking to the salesperson, now you're talking to Google, and you're putting in all those needs and requirements in the form of the query into Google. And now when we go to the cabinet, instead of showing you everything we've got, we're going to the cabinet, we're pulling out 3 to 5 products that match those intent that you have said that you're looking for, and when they're presenting that on the cabinet, which is in the form of a category page with hyper-targeted products assigned to it.
That's it. That's it, exactly. But it goes against what some brands have been thinking about they should be investing in for some time. So some brands are really focused, some sites are really focused on merchandising. And so merchandising often means that when you type something into the on-site search, or when you're on a category page, we're going to show you products that on average, for any user of our site, averaged across all the possible users, people like to click on and sometimes end up buying. And so we're showing you all the popular things. And what we really want to do for these pages is show you only the relevant things, even if that means, and this sounds crazy, but even if that means we're not going to show you any products, then great. And that's useful to know, because that just means that category page shouldn't exist. So we're not going to create those category pages that have 0 products, right? So those 0 search results, it's like, that's the worst thing possible for an on-site search. But what we're trying to do is only create the category pages that have enough relevant products, but they're extremely relevant. They're the best answers you can think of for this particular search query and for that group of search queries. And when we do that, those are amazing user experiences. And we think that by making more of the pages on your site the best user experience ever, that you're going to end up selling a lot more. And so that's what our data also backs up. Great user experiences result in great organic revenue. And so that's what it really comes down to. But it's really about making everything as relevant as possible because you don't have one kind of user. You have many kinds of users. And rather than thinking about them as based on what they look like or where they come from or where they live or what they do for a living, that kind of demographic data, we're personalizing this around psychographic data. Psychographic data is the user intent, right? And so we can look at them, even though there might be 100 different search queries that led to this page. Those search queries all have a certain topic in common, and we know that these products are fantastic answers to that topic. And so that allows us to aggregate that across 10,000 of these topics, right? You're covering potentially hundreds of thousands or millions of search queries. But for every single one of those, you've got a personalized experience, not personalized based on, I don't know, skin color or do I have a
wisdom of the crowd or whatever it is.
Yeah, those kind of things, but really very narrowly focused, because amazingly, before they came in up to your front door, they said exactly what they were looking for. And so we actually were able to come up with a few products that really match up to exactly that. And if they said exactly what they were looking for, and we didn't have any products that were relevant to that, we don't have a front door. And so that's actually a feature. That's a benefit. So we're not going to put in people who aren't interested in our products, hoping that
we're effectively rejecting or we're effectively repulsing. We can't service you. We can't help you.
That's it. And we think that's actually a great feature. So rather than just pulling in as many people as possible and hoping on average, we'll convert 1% of them, we're going to try and pull in the right people and make sure the experiences are flawless. And then those people are more likely to buy.
Love it. Robin, this has been a fantastic conversation. An hour has absolutely flown by. Now, when we think about the future of your platform, what's on your roadmap? If you were to look out 12 to 18 months from now, are there any services or functions or features that your customers are asking for that you don't do today that you say, hey, we'd love to be able to meet some more needs of our customers? Or internally, is there some things you say, look, we'd love to be able to do these 5 things. We don't do this today, but we think over the next 12 to 18 months, we will be able to tick a few more of these boxes. What's important to you? What's on your radar to improve your platform?
That's a great question. So maybe you've heard, so we've been doing AI for quite a few years, but recently there've been 1 or 2 breakthroughs in AI that have come down.
Just a couple.
Just a couple. But so what we've found is that some of those breakthroughs enable us to solve problems that we've been working on for years, solve them better than we had ever dreamt of before. And so one of those is really understanding is that what you were talking about, consulting with some of your customers about the information architecture for the site. So rather than just saying which pages to create and actually creating those, we're actually thinking and working out which of those map to the current site structure, which of those can't be expressed in the current site structure. Another way of approaching that is saying, there's a bunch of facets or a bunch of categories that just don't match up to demand at all. Nobody's looking for these things when they're actually expressed in pages. So even though you have products about them, does it really make sense to have that as your core site structure? And similarly, there are also lots of things, lots of facets or categories for which you have a bunch of products, but for which you don't have any facets. maybe you should think about creating facets or removing facets or changing the categories or changing the hierarchy. So that's a really tough problem that typically requires human expertise to understand how it fits together. But you also want massive amounts of data. So we have that data. What we're doing now is using AI to structure that. And so come up with an ideal site structure based on a product catalog and existing site structure and the demand in the local market. So that's a product that we're working on. We think it's actually a lot more interesting than just SEO. It's our other product, like we're talking about. It's actually how we can sell more better. But then it's also about like those, like I was saying, those categories and those facets. That's actually the language of the business itself. And the information you're providing, it's quite hard, for instance, just to get basic reporting on, I don't know, how much demand is there for these categories? Because that demand is often expressed in a very different way. If I say, I'm looking for some Jordan 4s, yeah, like really, I'm looking for some trainers. But because I don't say I'm looking for or sneakers, Jordan 4 sneakers or trainers, or what the actual underlying brand is and all these other things, it's missed out. But now we're able to fill that structured data back in from this unstructured demand data and do that at scale. So we're working on a product that enables that for any site, whether they're interested in SEO or not, and we'll be able to report on the demand for different facets and ways of thinking about the products. Sometimes we call them things, not strings, to run just the keywords are actually the language of the business. And then maybe some ways of leveraging that structured data in the future. But a lot of our customers, what they're really interested in is less about which pages to create and creating those pages, but really how can we get the right site structure? Like some of our customers, they have, say, brands, and they have, I don't know, a few thousand brands and lots of different sellers, but they don't have the product lines or the models that those brands sell, because that's tough structured data to get. But we can actually say, hey, people are looking for this set of product lines of this brand, and you've got an amazing pocket of demand there. It's incredible. Maybe you should build out the structured data around that. Or maybe there's 1,000 of those, and we'd like to help you build out structured data around those 1,000 examples to that scale. So that's the kind of the direction I think we're going in. We're working on some products now, all super interesting and top secret. But yeah, I think that's the kind of thing that this AI revolution is enabling us to do, because we know the kind of problems we want to solve, and now we have a lot more firepower to actually to solve those at scale.
Wow, super exciting. And how do you guys make your money? You're a SaaS platform. The customer doesn't have to host anything on their side. The pages are hosted by you typically, or created in the CMS dynamically via API. But when we think about how you make your money and how much a customer might expect to pay for your services, how do you charge as a SaaS platform? Do you have like tiers, or it's a subscription, or how do you make your money?
We charge monthly. Our customers normally signing up with an annual contract, which renews annually. Typical price would be $5,000 a month. It's a few thousand. There are some sites that are very small, and so we end up charging less. There are some sites that are massively larger, but normally it's going to be a kind of flat fee for creating these pages and the internal linking and the content. And internal linking content can actually be used for existing pages too. And doing that at the scale that we think it's actually really going to move the needle for the site. And then if they have multiple markets, we work with sites that sometimes have 10 or 20 different markets. Then we charge per market, but there's some volume pricing, because we're not going to charge 20 times. Okay, this volume pricing so that they can roll out to lots more markets a lot more easily. But we want to actually change the structure, the shape of the site, also because they often have different product inventory per market. But we want to change that per market because there's completely different demand, different search queries, different topics.
Of course.
And that all matches up. So the shape of the site should map to how people, it should be, buyer-centric in that local market. So we charge per market, but in the first market is $5,000 a month, typically, how it works.
Makes sense. And certainly brands could easily spend $5,000 a month with an SEO agency and potentially not. And as we talked about, manually scaling is very difficult, it's very time consuming, and even once you've manually scaled, keeping all of that updated is also a manual task. And so it's pretty easy to spend at least that much on an agency that doesn't scale. So the reality is this, especially if you're a mid-sized brand or larger.
Yeah, if you think about an enterprise SEO tool, you pay something very similar for getting a lot of insights, a lot of recommendations, but nothing changes on your site unless you somehow turn that into a fix.
Do it.
The same with an agency.
Manually.
Like you're saying, or even hire an FTE to do SEO, you're going to end up most likely paying more than that. And it's going to be very hard for that person to actually make changes to the site at scale that are going to move the needle. But in the end, that's where all the value comes from. And so by charging a very similar price to deliver value, deliver pages and changes that actually move the needle, rather than just insights and recommendations, we think we're differentiating ourselves from what you could otherwise buy with that money.
Totally makes sense. Now we've come to the end of our time together now, and I always like to take this time to turn the microphone over to my guest, let them ask me one question, any question they like, can be personal or professional. So Robin Allenson from Similar.ai, what is your question for me today?
Wow. I'm thinking of all the possible questions. So this is an unfair question, but I'm reminded of this probably apocryphal, but there's a kind of a joke that somebody's in Oxford, like one of the greatest universities in the UK, and they're in their finals, the very last exam, and the exam question just says, write the perfect question for this exam and answer it. And they look at it for a while, and then they copy the question down twice, and they walk out, and they get full marks. So my question is, actually, what would be the best question to ask you, Jason? And please, could you answer it?
Wow. I've never had it put quite that way before, but I think if I was in your shoes, the question I would ask me, especially knowing my background is, at least for the last couple of years anyway, has been laser focused on the B2B world, is SEO applicable in the B2B world? Do we think about SEO in the B2B e-commerce world, or is this really just a B2C and D2C thing? And my answer to that would be, no, it's not just a B2C and D2C thing. I think historically it has been, absolutely. But I am having more clients than ever before now going, hey, we're embarking on this e-commerce replatform project. We're spending $100, $200, $300, $400,000 on this project. How can we make sure we get outstanding ROI from this project over and above just servicing the customers we already have? How can we turn this into a platform that also gets us new customers? And now, where 99% of B2B websites before maybe were gated behind a login and you couldn't even see their catalog and neither could Google, now they're saying, look, let's ungate our catalog. Maybe you have to log in to see prices, maybe you have to log in to see inventory, but at least our visitors to our site can see what we carry, they can see the range, Google can see it, they can index it, because a lot more B2B suppliers are being found by B2B buyers through Google than ever before. Instead of those B2B sellers going out with a field sales team and trying to land new accounts, the new generation of B2B buyer, they're starting their query on Google just like they would in their personal life for products they buy personally. And so when they're looking for a new supplier for widget X, if they can't find you in Google as a supplier of widget X, then you will never be under consideration as a B2B supplier of that product. And so I think SEO is becoming more important than ever before in the B2B world. And the B2B world is starting to realize that e-commerce should be also a customer acquisition channel, not just a sales channel. And this is a mindset shift that I'm seeing slowly start to take hold in the B2B world in ways that I've never, ever seen before. And so it's actually really exciting because it means that typical B2B businesses have historically been a closed shop. They've been a closed kimono. Basically, it's almost like insider knowledge of where you get your products from. And hey, if you create a relationship with that supplier, then you don't want to let anybody else know. And it's all been a cloak and dagger kind of stuff in the B2B world. And it's increasingly not that way anymore, especially with Amazon Business and all these B2B specific marketplaces. Now, it's becoming a much more open-minded channel. Now, this whole B2B e-commerce channel is becoming much more open-minded, and I think that is only going to benefit the B2B world. So that would be my question, and that would be my answer.
So exciting. I'm getting revved up. That was a great question, and that was an awesome answer as well. So thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Now, Robin, I will put the link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes as well as the link to your website. Other than that, how do you like people to get a hold of you?
That's kind of it. So our website is Similar.ai. And I'm posting things once or twice a week on LinkedIn. So I did a long time ago, I did a degree in AI. And so I often talk about AI and some of the changes we're seeing going on and trying to give people more of a nuanced understanding of some of the trade-offs of what's going on. Also been running, this is my second AI software as a service company. So I sold my last startup, been running this one for a few years, so trying to give people a bit of background. So if you're not looking for AI for SEO services, but you'd like to stay up to date on some of the stuff that's going on in the AI world, you can follow me on LinkedIn. Or if you'd like to reach out, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or go to the website and have a look at what we're up to there.
Robin, Thank you so much for your time. You've given me enlightening insights into the enterprise SEO world that I have never had before. And like I said, I am not the expert, and it's so good to have experts like you on the podcast to share the wisdom with my audience and me. So thank you very much, and I can't wait to speak to you again soon. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.